It all started on a Friday afternoon. I was sitting in the hospital cafeteria, clutching a lukewarm coffee and trying to shake off the exhaustion that had settled into my bones. My sister had just undergone emergency surgery, and I hadn't slept properly in days. The worst part, she was still in critical condition, and the weight of it all felt like it was crushing me. As I stared at my phone screen, I saw a notification pop up. It was from my husband. "I'm done. Don't come back. The locks are changed." At first, I thought it was a joke. Maybe some weird, poorly timed prank. I couldn't believe what I was reading. But then I tried calling him, and there was no answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. Panic surged through me, and I immediately sent him a text message, hoping for an explanation, a sign that this was all a mistake. But no, the text never delivered. That's when it hit me, I wasn't being pranked. He had just ended everything between us. And I didn't even get the decency of a face-to-face conversation. I didn't even get a reason. I quickly made my way back to our house, feeling the tension in my chest grow with every step. As I walked up to the door, I was praying that it was all some kind of misunderstanding. But when I tried to unlock the door, I realized the key didn't fit. It wasn't just that the door was locked, it was as if he had changed the locks while I was sitting next to my sister at the hospital, and I hadn't even been informed. I knocked, hoping that maybe he'd come to the door and explain himself. Maybe he'd say it was all a mistake and that I could come inside, talk, and fix things. But nothing. No answer. My heart sank. I stood there, staring at the door, the cold air biting at my skin, but I didn't know what else to do. My neighbors started peeking through their windows, and I realized I was no longer just locked out of my house. I was locked out of my life. I didn't know what to do. Everything felt like it was collapsing around me. I tried calling him again, but still no answer. In a daze, I walked around the back of the house and into the garage, hoping maybe my car was still there. I had paid for it, after all. 2 was supposed to be mine. But when I got there, my car was gone. Not just gone, it was missing. I stood frozen, staring at the empty spot where it used to be. There was no sign of it anywhere. I tried calling the police, thinking maybe it had been stolen. But then it hit me, the car wasn't stolen. He had sold it. He had sold the car that I had worked so hard for. Without telling me. Without even giving me a heads up. The money, gone too. I was left standing in the driveway, feeling empty. I had nothing. No home. No car. And all I could do was call my best friend and tell her I needed to crash at her place for a while. But that night, the reality of what had just happened started to sink in. The next day, my emotions were still a whirlwind. I didn't know how to feel, but I had to face the reality that the man I thought I knew wasn't the person I had believed him to be. I started going through our shared digital devices, hoping to find some kind of explanation. Maybe I missed something, some sign that he had been planning this for a while. And then, I found it. An old iPad that we hadn't used in months. I unlocked it, and that's when everything changed. There were messages on there, text messages from my coworker. The same coworker I had introduced to him during a company party months ago. And the messages, they were not what I had expected. It wasn't just that they were talking. No, they were planning. They had been planning everything for months, this betrayal, this heart-wrenching betrayal. They had mocked me in their messages, joked about how I was the fool who didn't see what was going on. They planned the perfect way to cut me out of the picture, and I had been blind to it. I never saw it coming. My heart shattered as I scrolled through their conversations. I felt physically sick, the kind of sick you get when you realize you've been living a lie for years. I confronted him, even though I knew he wouldn't be there. He wasn't there to answer my questions, to defend himself, or to make sense of anything. And that made everything worse. It wasn't just that he had betrayed me, it was the fact that he didn't even care enough to tell me why. I wasn't worth an explanation. I wasn't worth the decency of a proper goodbye. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to process what had happened. I cried, I screamed, and then, eventually, I decided I wasn't going to let him break me. I couldn't let him take everything from me. I started researching my legal options, talking to a lawyer, figuring out what I could do to get my life back. The court process was long and grueling, but I fought back. I fought for everything that was mine, my assets, my car, and my dignity. I was determined to show the world that this wasn't the end of my story. It felt like a battle every day. I had moments of doubt, times when I wondered if it was worth it, but then I thought about the person I was before all of this happened, strong, independent, and unapologetically me. I wasn't going to let him take that away from me. And eventually, I won. It wasn't easy, but the court saw the truth, and his lies started to fall apart. He lost the case, and I was granted part of the assets, though the emotional toll was far greater than any financial compensation could make up for. After everything, I knew I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined. I started therapy, something I should have done a long time ago, but I had been too busy trying to hold everything together. Therapy helped me work through the trauma of what had happened and gave me the strength to move forward. I got a better job, one that I actually enjoyed, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my life again. I moved into a new apartment, something small but cozy, and I bought myself a new car. This time, I made sure it was in my name. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again. The court process was long and grueling, but I fought back. I fought for everything that was mine, my assets, my car, and my dignity. I was determined to show the world that this wasn't the end of my story. It felt like a battle every day. I had moments of doubt, times when I wondered if it was worth it, but then I thought about the person I was before all of this happened, strong, independent, and unapologetically me. I wasn't going to let him take that away from me. And eventually, I won. It wasn't easy, but the court saw the truth, and his lies started to fall apart. He lost the case, and I was granted part of the assets, though the emotional toil was far greater than any financial compensation could make up for. After everything, I knew I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined. I started therapy, something I should have done a long time ago, but I had been too busy trying to hold everything together. Therapy helped me work through the trauma of what had happened and gave me the strength to move forward. I got a better job, one that I actually enjoyed, and for the first time in years, I felt like one was in control of my life again. I moved into a new apartment, something small but cozy, and I bought myself a new car. This time, I made sure it was in my name. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me again. As for him, well, karma has a funny way of working things out. I heard he lost his job, and not just that, he lost his reputation. Word got around about his cheating, and his former friends turned their backs on him. The last time I heard anything about him, he was living alone, with nothing but his own guilt for company. And as for my former coworker, she ended up losing her job too, when the truth came out about the affair. People don't forget that kind of betrayal. She paid the price for her actions. In the end, I came out stronger. It wasn't easy, and I'll never forget the pain I went through, but I learned something from this experience. I learned that I am worth more than any betrayal, and that I have the power to heal, rebuild, and thrive. If you've been through something similar, remember that you are not alone. It might feel like the end, but it's just the beginning of your journey. Keep going. Moving forward wasn't easy. There were nights when I would sit up in bed, staring at the ceiling, and think about everything I had lost. But then, I would remind myself of everything I had gained: my independence, my strength, and my ability to heal. I wasn't the same person I was before. I was better, stronger, and wiser. I knew I could survive this, and eventually, I thrived. I started reconnecting with friends I had lost touch with, people I had neglected while I was in the relationship. They welcomed me back with open arms, and slowly, I started to trust again. It was a slow process, but it felt like I was finally finding myself again. I started doing things I had always wanted to do but had put off for years. I traveled, took up new hobbies, and even joined a yoga class. For the first time in years, I was doing things for me. And it felt amazing. Part 10. The New Me. Months passed, and life started feeling normal again. I wasn't waking up with a knot in my stomach anymore. I was finally able to sleep through the night without waking up in a panic. I began to rediscover joy, something I hadn't felt in such a long time. I had forgotten what it felt like to just live. But now, I was learning again, piece by piece, day by day. I even started dating again, though I took it slow. There were moments when I felt nervous, wondering if I could ever trust someone like I trusted him. But I reminded myself that not everyone was like him. Not everyone would betray me. Part 11. Unexpected Encounters. One day, a year after everything happened, I ran into him. I had just finished a lunch meeting with a colleague when I walked into the parking lot and saw him standing by his car. At first, I froze. I hadn't seen him in so long, and the sight of him brought back a flood of emotions I wasn't ready to deal with. But then, something surprising happened. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. Nothing. No rage. No regret. I simply felt indifferent. I realized then that I had healed. I had moved on. He saw me, but didn't approach. For a moment, I wondered if he would say something, apologize, try to explain, or even just look guilty. But he didn't. Instead, he just turned away and got in his car, driving off into the distance. And that was it. Part 12. The Final Lesson. I spent some time reflecting on that moment. It was strange, but also empowering. I had gone from feeling completely destroyed by his betrayal to being able to look at him, the person who had hurt me so deeply, and feel nothing at all. I had healed. I had learned to forgive, not for him, but for myself. As I thought about everything I had gone through, I realized that the most important lesson wasn't that I had survived, it was that I had grown. I had become a stronger, more independent person, and I was proud of the woman I had become. Now, when I think about the past, I no longer feel anger or pain. I feel gratitude. Gratitude for the strength I discovered within myself. Gratitude for the journey that taught me so much about love, loss, and the power of moving forward. I will always carry the scars, but they no longer define me. They are a reminder of how far I've come. The person I am today wouldn't have existed without everything I went through. And while I would never wish this kind of pain on anyone, I know now that even in the darkest moments, there is always the possibility of light. Conclusion. The beginning of a new chapter. And so, life continued. I didn't need a man to complete me. I didn't need anyone's approval or validation. I had finally learned how to stand on my own. And that was enough. If you're reading this and you're going through something similar, I want you to know that you are stronger than you think. You are capable of rebuilding, of moving on, and of finding happiness again. Life can knock us down, but it doesn't define who we are. We define who we are. So, keep going. Your story is still being written, and the best chapters are still ahead.